Welcome to Living Lit, where conversations spark inspiration to live in truth. Journey together with us to explore what it means to live a liturgical life and walk in the truth of our faith. Let's instill a culture in our hearts, homes, families, and world, living a life cooperating with and walking alongside our Lord. I'm Robin Brueggemann. Let's be a light, share the light, shine the light, and live lit. Well, friends, on today's show, I have a very special guest, Deb Hadley. You guys, this is a wild ride. I just met Deb actually officially in person about 10 minutes ago. Right. We met on the phone officially this morning. I was at an event that Deb spoke at last night in the Sioux Falls Diocese. She was at Risen Savior in Brandon, South Dakota. And she speaks on grief. And it was just kind of a funny chain of events of how I ended up being there in person to attend. And so I showed up to this event, not really knowing what to expect. I knew it would be about grief and turning sorrow into joy. Mm-hmm. And that's about all I knew. And it was something that was so impactful that I attended. It was just incredible. Deb shared her journey, and I was just at a loss for words. I had so many emotions, so many thoughts, but at this loss of just even what to say. And I was attending with a friend, and all I could think of was, wow, this lovely woman who has suffered greatly shared her heart and so much. And while you, Deb, were sharing, my eyes were just the whole time turned to Christ. And you did that so beautifully. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I need this woman to come on, and I need her to share her story. And other people just need to know. So, Deb, will you share with us as I'm making you start
crying already? Yeah.
Well, what's really interesting is I think you might have shared somewhere that because I quick kind of Googled you in like a 10-minute window that I had while I was like, not driving, but like at stoplights and things like this.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right.
And anyways, I saw where you will laugh when you attend your events. You will laugh and you will cry. And let me tell you what, the church was almost packed, and there was so much laughing and so much crying and so much joy, and it was just an incredible event. So there may be some crying in the studio here, and that's okay. And I'm sure many of you, this is clean. It's just crumpled.
Thank you.
You have that in your purse, right, too? Yeah. The tissue that you put in there just in case, but it gets crumpled.
Yeah, thank you.
But anyways, your story is just incredible. And I just want everybody to know of, you have a ministry that was born out of your grief and tremendous loss and suffering. So I anxious isn't the word. I just want you to share your story so you can help others. So Deb, thank you for coming in. She's joining us before she hits the road to go back home. So Deb, will you tell us about you and tell us about your story?
What a wild ride, isn't it? You can't make these things up. And thank you for your lovely introduction. My story it's a tough one, and it comes through the word that you said that really resonated is when you said your ministry. And I just remember I do a morning God boost, which I'll talk about, and people would talk about my ministry, and I would be like, my ministry? Like that I could ever do ministry. But we're all called to do ministry. Mm-hmm. And as you said this morning when we were talking, that sometimes you're like, it was always within you, but the gifts don't come to fruition until something like tragic happens. Like they're there and something has to catapult them forward. And mine, truly, I never would have known that the other gifts were within me, but it does come from great sorrow. And so my talk last night my hope was that, everyone grieves, and that grief is from the loss of someone who passes away. But grief is just when something comes into our life that we didn't ask for. So it can be through a divorce or addiction or abuse or whatever that is, and through great loss. And my hope was that through my story, that perhaps I could provide some hope and inspiration that no matter what happens to your life, whether they were choices of your own or things that happen, circumstances that you had no control over, that you can still really have an amazing life and find joy. But it really does have to be centered on the Lord. And And that has been my saving grace, is to the stripping that has happened to find the Lord. And my journey started back June 5th, 2013, was the day that my daughter Kaylie passed away. She was 24 years old. She was an English teacher. We were planning a wedding. She was moving home that day. Very mixed emotions because she loved her teaching job. But because she was getting married, he lived up in the metro area. We're from Minnesota. And so she would move up there. So she would teach summer school in the small town of Sleepy Eye that we were living in, and then get married and then move to the cities. And the plan was so perfect. And for some reason that night, she had a seizure in her apartment. And she died of something called SUDEP, sudden unexpected death from epilepsy. And I never heard of it. It's when a perfectly healthy person who's on medication for their seizure dies for no reason. It just didn't make any sense at all. A sad thing for us is that we had just taken her to some specialists, and they just changed her medications. And we were feeling very confident that these seizures would be, that they were under control. And I just said to her, it was 3 months. I just said, I'm so grateful that we went and did, pursued this testing, and that I don't have to worry about you. She goes, I know, Mom, I think we got it. And then she would die the next day, of a seizure from SUDEP. So that rocked my world in such a big way. As I shared last night, I didn't know that she had died. I just knew that she was in her apartment and that we would see her in the hospital. So we were on the way to the hospital when a police officer called and asked if I was her mother, and then told me that she didn't make it. And people listening who have had that experience, it is just, it's so gut-wrenching, but you become so numb to it. And often in grief, we talk about, just that denial and that shock, which is really probably a good thing to happen, so that you can't quite understand your reality. And I don't think I could wrap my head around it, but I do know that it was very dark. It was a very dark place. It was, my first thought was, well, first of all, like, how can she just not be? And that I would never be able to talk or see her again. And the next thing that came through my mind was like, well, does God know? Like, does he know about this? And I'm so shocked at that. But it wasn't that, he's here and, she's in heaven, and of course he knows. It was, does he know? And then it went into, well, does he care? Like, does he know, and does he care? Well, now what? And now where do we go? And then it came into, I'm Catholic. I've been Catholic my whole life. I'm a cradle Catholic. I was born into it. So this is what you are, and this is what you do. And so often I think that rules without reason lead to rebellion. And sometimes I didn't know reasons for rules or why. And then you're just kind of a little rebellious, growing up. But I've always gone to church, always went through the motions, always did everything that and please make me a good girl, like tried to do things, but knew also that I was a sinner. And I almost thought, like, did they make all this up? Like, was this even real? So it's when you're already grieving in shock. And then I got to the point where I think I'm being punished. And I think I'm being punished because Kaylie was from my first marriage. I divorced her dad. It was really ugly. A lot of it were poor choices on my part. So then I was sure that I was being punished. So now he's a punishing God. So going from, now I'm angry, I'm confused, then I feel shame and guilt, and of course I deserve this. Of course I deserve it. So it's just really damning on my part, and very difficult on my part. So it's a sad place to be. And I found that grief is everything that happens to you that you don't control. And my grief was very internal. I couldn't eat, couldn't drink. I lost my voice for at least for a couple of years. And so this is not like a voice, this crackiness that I had, but I can talk and you can hear me. I'm grateful. But I did have a beautiful Catholic woman named Chris who came to my house. She had told me that the Lord had asked her to pray with me. She was just acquaintance. And I had beautiful people around me. But when Chris prayed with me, she wrapped her arms around me. It was so deep and intense. Like, I felt the Holy Spirit jump. Like, I had never felt an encounter. I guess what I realized, that she had something I didn't. Like, she really loved the Lord, like as if he was real. Like, after all these, and that she loved him more than anyone or anything. And it was such a beautiful relationship. And I wanted that. I don't have that. I realized like I didn't have a relationship. I had all the rules. I went through the motions. I went to church because I had to, not because of out of love from my Lord. I didn't want to sin and tried to follow, not because I wanted to be obedient to the Father, because I love him and come in humble humility to him. I was more like, I don't want to do that rule. I more rebellious that way growing up. And she had this great love. And I realized that I was missing that relationship. And so that was this just full head on, I need to find him. And so that was like the start of the journey. So from there, I started going to daily mass, and I would just sit and cry. I would just sit and cry, but I was just present. I started to read Jesus Calling, a daily devotion, and someone had handed me that book to Kaylie or to me after Kaylie died and said, read this every day. I already had one.
Oh,
but it seemed,
wow.
I had one. My sister-in-law, Denise, who travels with me, she had given me one years prior. But it wasn't a lifeline. Yeah, it was just something that I did when I felt like it. But someone handed me this one and said, read it every day because this is exactly what the Lord has to say. And I just felt that every day, like yesterday's is like, in this world, you will have troubles. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. And you can either go it alone or you can grab my hand. And it's like, no kidding. And so it started to speak to me. And then I never read the Bible out of enjoyment. It was all out of obligation when I had to. And so I didn't read the Bible. And I think that the majority is like that. I think I'm like the majority. Yeah. And I had a study Bible that was given as a gift that I just didn't know what even to do with. But there's verses on the bottom of Jesus Calling. And I started to go to those verses in the Bible. So if it was like 2 Corinthians 5:7, I would read it. Then I'd read the study notes. Then I'd read all of 2 Corinthians 5. Then I'd read all the study notes. And then pretty soon I was like, well, who wrote this? And did you know, like, the Corinthians did not write that book? So
I think I've heard that.
I know it. So I didn't have any idea who the Apostle Paul was or any of his story. I just didn't. I really went through the emotions. So it started to come to life for me. Mm-hmm. And the word started to speak to me, and I could feel my life in it, and I hungered for it. And then I'd read, all of Corinthians, and then I want to know all about Paul. And then it started to grow, and I realized that really things that happened to me, it happened to all the disciples, and God had taken the greatest sinners who are very ordinary and done extraordinary works with them, and that he is always faithful, even though hardships happen. And I had someone tell me too after Kaylie passed away, and I said, I can't, how do you live when you lose a child? How do you live? And I remember her just saying, you stand firm in your faith and you don't sway. Just stand in it. And you just, that unconditional, like you trust him no matter what. And there were so many things that I thought I could have done, would have done, should have done. I missed things. And she had said to me, the Lord knows your last breath, and you don't get you don't get 1 minute longer. And I remember saying, "Do you really believe that?" Mm-hmm. And she's like, "Yes, because if you were supposed to have done something, you would have, and you weren't, and you didn't, and God knew. And this is exactly." And I had to stand firm in that I can't change it. God knows, God has her, she's in a good place, and that she's not dead, mm-hmm. that she's alive and well and through the veil, and that God uses this hardship for great things. And so I did. I was like, okay, I know that there's great purpose in suffering, and I don't want to suffer and just be for nothing, mm-hmm. So I was just like a stripping of being this vessel. And so as I was going on this journey, surrounding myself with people, joining Bible studies, just getting into the Word, I intentionally every day carve out. I'm up at 5:00, except for not today because I didn't go to bed till late. But I'm up early and I spend time in His presence, and I read Jesus Calling. I love the Lectio Divina, something new. I love doing that, and I really need to set myself and be grounded. And I've been doing that, for years now, and on my journey after Kaylie passed away, it was 9 months later, which was Kaylie's 9-month anniversary into heaven. And that was March 5th of 2013. Our family was together, and we were starting to feel joy. We were starting to move forward. And 2 days after that, Denise had invited me to come to a program called Set Apart up at Northwestern College in Roseville, and it was set apart. Like, set apart for what? Like, what does God set us apart? And I was like, let's do everything we can. Like, we say, we're not trying to grow deeper in love with it. We're in training. Like, this is a training ground, because if you try, you're off the hook. And I didn't make that up. I got that from another pastor.
I wrote that down last night.
It was so good. You know, like, if you try, you know, I'm going to try to lose weight. I'm going to try to work out. I'm going to try to spend more time with my family. I'm going to try to grow deeper in my faith, you know. But it's just a cop-out. Well, it didn't work, you know, because when you're in training, you know, there are times where you're going to take a day off, but you know that if you're going to win the race or whatever you're going to do, if you're going to succeed at something, you have to train for it. So we've been in training for like 11 years. So we went to that conference. It was a 2-day, had stayed overnight. And it was one of those mornings where, the weather in Minnesota and South Dakota, where it was warm and the snow had melted, and Tyler and friends were outside. They were shoveling off the driveway. They were playing basketball in shorts. And then in the afternoon, the wind started to pick up and the temperature started to drop, and then the snow started to fall. And so that there was ice on the roads that froze. And so the weather was bad, you know, and I called my husband that night. It was probably about 8:00, and just to find out how the day went. And he just said there was a really bad accident. He said he goes, fire trucks and air ambulance came in. He goes, it's really bad. And so of course my first thought was, where's Tyler in all this? And he assured me that Tyler was just there. He was sitting on the couch with his buddy John. They were eating a Subway sandwich. They were watching the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves were losing. It was halftime. And so they decided just to go meet up at the Senex station and just drive around town. And he had just left. And so I called Tyler and he didn't answer. I texted him and he didn't text back. But the setting that I was in, the women were so kind. And so we went to another room. We were talking just about our faith, talking about where God was, talking about, you know, miracles and signs and some things that I'd seen from, and it was just so beautiful. And so it took my mind off of the accident, and it brought it into just this whole, you know, in grief, when you can talk and share and tell, it's just so healing. And it was just so wonderful in my grieving process to be able to mourn and be able to talk with people who cared and would listen. And then we got back to our hotel room, and it was myself, my sister-in-law, Denise, and her daughter, Annalie. And they had crawled in bed, and I had called my husband, and he hadn't heard, and I'd called Tyler, and then he was with John. I called John, and then I started calling around because it would not have been normal for him to not answer me, because Kaylie didn't answer me when I was looking for her. And so he knew. I'm like, don't you ever do that to me. And so he knew. And so I had all these red flags up just for who he is, that he would not have done that. He would have answered. And it was, Denise came into the bathroom. It was like 10:30, and she was just assuring me, like, Deb, he's okay. Like, just, you know, come to bed. He is just fine. And I just looked at her. I go, he is not okay. I knew that he was not okay. And I called the Sleepy Eye police station, and the police officer answered, and I just said, this is Deb Hadley, and I need you to tell me that my son Tyler was not in that accident. And he's just, we're on our way to your house right now. And I go, well, I'm not there. I said, I need to know if he's already gone or if he's in that air ambulance and he has a fighting chance. And he said, I'm sorry, he's already gone. And in the midst of like falling apart, he said, there were 4 boys that died. And that was the like, oh my gosh, that other people are going to have to go through this. Like, there's other people that are hurting. And I'm like, who are they? And he couldn't tell me. And I'm like, oh, you're going to tell me. Because Tyler had so many friends. It could have been a number of people that it could have been with. And so he shared, Peyton had died. Peyton's brother, Kansas, was the driver, and Peyton was 17. It was a student at St. Mary's in Sleepy Eye. Kansas, he was the one that was air ambulanced out, and he was by the helicopter, and he was really fighting for his life. And then it was Tyler. John was the boy sitting next to him. They were classmates, or not classmates, but friends. And then a boy named Caleb that was just visiting Peyton that ended up coming out with them. And he had passed away as well. So the 4 boys. And I remember getting off the phone. I do remember falling, and I do remember saying, I can't do this. I can't do it. I can't do it. And there was such a difference this time is because I just felt the Lord was like right present with me, almost picking me up. It's like, almost like this is what I've been preparing you for. Because if I back up a little bit, when Chris came and she prayed with me, I was a very good Our Father, Hail Mary, Glory Be prayer. And that's really what I grew up with. And when Chris prayed for me, just how you prayed at the start, it was so deep and it was so magical and it moved me so much, like I just melted in her arms. And when in my grief, I was so deep in it that I couldn't see anybody else's but my own. And he was falling apart and he was going through some tough things. And I remember just saying to him, I have nothing to give you, but I can pray with you. And I wrapped my arms around him. It was the first time it just flowed out and he just melted. And it's over and he goes to me, oh, Mom, it was so good. And I go, I know, it was so good. And then after he passed away, all of his friends came to our house because they felt like God was there. And they had watched me, our family, the way we handled Kaylee's passing and how we were just relying on the Lord. And we got home about 3:00 in the morning. Our house was packed with people. And we walked in and got in a circle. And I just led them all in prayer. And someone who would never have done that. And I just knew that that was the mission, is that to me, it was clear I was supposed to help those who are hurting find hope in the Lord and get to heaven. That was just always added on. And I remember from the moment that Tyler passed away until his funeral, which was like 5-7 days later, our house was just packed with people around the clock. And the boys, his friends, were downstairs and they were just all like beside themselves crying. And I brought them together and I said, we have to read what Jesus Calling says today. And it says in capital letters, you are not going to be able to handle the events of today. You can either doggedly go it alone or you could take my hand in humble dependence. And I just said, like, we have to take his hand in humble dependence, and that troubles are going to come your way, but that God will make good. And it was such, and then in the end, we put our arms around each other and then we prayed the Lord's Prayer together. And they could all join. And it's just, there's so much comfort and just beautiful prayer when the Spirit leads. And then my friend Chris, who had originally prayed with me, she would always say, do you want to add? And I was like almost embarrassed, or I didn't know how. And I would always say, no, I'm good. And then she would always close with the Lord's Prayer. And I asked her, I said, why do you do that? She said, because everybody knows it. And then you feel like you're participating versus just being prayed over. So I always close in the Lord's Prayer. I would have last night, but Father opened it, but I could have closed in it. But to always, when you pray with people or people who are hurting, to close with the Lord's Prayer, they can participate. And the words, that when they say the words, the tears come and there's just this beautiful cleansing. And so truly, after Tyler's passing, I knew that there was a call. I love like the living lit, like to be lit on fire for the Lord. I just felt that that he had big work for me to do. And I told you a little bit earlier, I'd done a Bible study years before that. And afterward, I just said to them, I know that the Lord has something big I'm supposed to do. And I don't mean to be arrogant because I'm nothing. I said, but whatever it is, I know it's under my feet. And I was like, well, it's not a food shelf. It's not housing. It's not world peace. I said, but whatever it is, I know that it's under my feet. And then as this comes to, fruition, it's like wherever my feet are, wherever I am, I'm supposed to help those who are hurting find hope in the Lord and help them get to heaven. It's what it is. And so that's what I've been doing. And through our Mourning God booths, which we can talk about, through the work that I do, through our foundation that we do, through speaking, is just sharing his love. And often I speak in schools as well, which is different. But I prayed on that a lot too, because I know I'm supposed to help those who are find hope in the Lord. And I just feel the Lord say, sometimes you're only fighting chance. Get on in there and just spread goodness. And our slogan is, be kind, give more, stay humble, and just spread the goodness of being kind, because when people start spreading goodness, then we can ease in too with this word. So,
my goodness.
So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Yeah.
Amazing. So amazing. And what comes to mind, I guess, is just as moms, I think, and I'm sure you had this, you think the worst thing that could ever happen to me is
hands down.
One of my kids, and you lost 2. It's unthinkable, unimaginable. Wow, I cannot imagine. I cannot begin to imagine.
You can't, but you imagine it. Tyler lost a friend named Wyatt when he was 6, and I watched his mom hang on to his picture and almost crawl into the grave, and she was so broken, and I just thought I'd crawl in.
Yeah.
I'd crawl in. Like, I couldn't live that.
Yeah. But you have, like, the way you, I don't want to say switched your dependence. I mean, I know more of your story. And you said you have all kinds. I mean, there's so much about you to share. So that we couldn't even squeeze into an episode here. But you had said something last night that I was like, wow. You said, I am the saddest, most joyful person. And I was like, yes, because you just exude this joy and trust in the Lord. And I just look at you and I'm just like, wow, you're so solid in your faith. And you shared how you weren't always like, this, how it came because you were so focused on your grief, as anybody would be. Oh my goodness. And then you realize you talked about kind of like removing this thing in front of you. And then also just having Christ first, and how, and not that you did, that people don't, but it was like this deeper longing. Like, I really, really need to know you, like your lifeline. And
it's words too. It's like when I said, is your faith unconditional? Well, yes, that's really easy to say. And is God first in your life? Absolutely. And you think that, absolutely. And then when tragedy strikes, and it's so tested. And then I did realize that my faith was not unconditional, that it was very conditional. And I realized that he was not first in my life, that my children were first in my life. And in fact, on my journey too, I had to find the Lord. I had to dig into him so that I could get to heaven, so I could be with my kids. And it still wasn't about him. It was still about so I had to really change my focus and put him first. And I come to a point where I'm very grateful, and I talked about when you're in grief, whatever it is, it just sucks the life right out of you. It's all you focus on. It captures all your thoughts and all your feelings and all your emotions. And at the time Kaylie passed, everyone and everything else was still there but her, and all I could focus is on her and wanting to be with her, and it was stealing my life. But what I'm so grateful for is that as I started to praise God and thank him, I didn't want to, but I was just like, thank you. For having her I had her for 24 years, for saying yes to the dress. She felt true love. Thank you for dying on the cross, because I know that she's safe with you. I just thanked him. And then I was able to move that off. And what I'm grateful for is that it allowed me to see Tyler and his struggles. And there was so much beauty in the 9 months that I had him. So many great conversations, so much in depth. Like, I had comfort knowing he was with her in heaven, because he had said if there was any place in the whole wide world that he would want to be, it would be with her in heaven. And he was exactly where he wanted to be. And I knew that, and I knew that they were together. And so, but it opened up, if I would have focused so much on the loss of Kaylie, which was so hard, I would have missed out on all the blessings that were still there. And we know that there's going to be more. And so how do we keep it here and trust in the Lord? Rather, there's times I find myself, please don't take my husband, please, 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 please. And I get so fearful. And then it's like, fear, it can destroy you. And then it's to come back and I'm not going to be afraid. Do not be afraid, because the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. You will be with me. You will equip me. You will equip me better than I am right now. You will be with me, because I have seen it. I have seen the goodness of God, and I can't even believe it. And would I have chosen this path? Never. Any of it. I would have taken my kids back. I would not have chosen this. But when there is no choice, they're not coming back, then I can choose to either go down the hole of being a victim and letting it destroy me and truly destroying my whole life and how painful, or I can choose to grab onto the Lord and be a victor and say, I am an open, willing vessel to do your work, and I'm going to trust you through all of this. And I know there's going to be more pain and more hardship, but you've equipped me so well, and I will do it. And so that's where I stand. And we do a remembrance walk out at our lake once a year where we put loved ones' pictures on boards so their families can find them out on the path. And then we put Bible verses on the back, and we do a big dove release. And it's just a really beautiful event to remember our loved ones. And my parents are still living. They're 86 and 88. And I always think if I would have lost them first, that would have been my biggest loss. And so one thing in grief, we don't compare griefs. And so people who are listening to this, I don't want them to think, well, gosh, what am I complaining about? No, it's your grief is your worst grief. And if my parents would have gone first, that would have been my worst, but they didn't. My children did. And plus, I'm in training for this. I work on it every single day. And my dad said my parents have come to our walk that we've done. And my dad said to me this last one, he goes, Deborah, there'll be a time my picture's going to be out on that trail. And I said, Dad, I hope that it's your picture on the trail and not mine, because I would never want you to walk this trail and have to see me and feel that pain. And so I'm almost like, I'll take it for the team. But my family is very open about death. We talk about it often, so we're very free. But there would have been a time I would say, don't talk like that, don't say that. But it's like, no, you can say that because there is a time, and you should go first in the scheme of life, of the way that we think grief is. I mean, the Lord never said you're going to die in order. He didn't say that. There was no place in the Bible that said that you will be born, live this long life with no problems, and then die when you're ready. It does. It's like we will have troubles, and it's going to be hard. And so I don't know who's going to go first. We never know. It could. I don't know if I have more than this day. So I want to live it to the fullest. I want to see my blessings. I want to love on people. And if He chooses to take me home, I am so ready. But if He chooses to keep me, then I'm just so ready to do the work that He's called all of us to do.
This is just such a beautiful story of taking your suffering and sorrow and using it to still glorify the Lord. And I watched people interact with you last night and the hope that you bring to them. So the ministry that has been born out of, I think it was when Kaylie passed away first, then your family, so this was when Tyler, this was short, right? It was before Tyler passed that you guys came up with this kind of motto or slogan that would be your family's way of remembering Kaylie. That's how it started, right? So that was be kind, love more, stay humble.
Be kind, give more.
Oh, give more. Yep. Okay, give more. Okay, so will you share what that is? Because it's really your journey up to then and beyond.
Yeah.
When you didn't even know. I mean, this ministry was the making when Tyler was here.
Well, what happened was I'm so grateful for my husband, because as soon as Kaylie passed away, he said, we should do a 5K in memory of Kaylie, and we should give the money to the Epilepsy Foundation in Minnesota just to make good come from this. So other families, to help other families not have to go through what we're going through, and then to give donations or scholarships to the school where she was teaching at Martin County West. And so for me, right away, it was like, yes, we're going to do that. And the funny thing about that, why it was a 5K, is in August of 2012, so 6-8 months before, Kaylie, I was in track and cross country, and I ran, and I'd done a marathon, and I just ran all the time, and she just did not. So she wanted to do a couch to 5K. And I'm like, well, I will train with you. We will do that. And boy, when you're a runner, I realize that you are, but when you are not, you are not. And you really have to be in training, So she was in training to run this 5K. So we were doing the couch to 5K together. And then the event was in June of 2012. And then my husband said, he goes, well, I'll run that with you guys. And then my bonus daughter, Jessie, said, I'll run. She ran it with us. My bonus son, Josh. So my stepsons, they like to be called bonus. We like to be called bonus kids. And Josh, Tyler ran it. And one of Kaylee's friends, like we all ran, our whole family ran it. And I remember when we came over the finish line, I'm like, Kaylee, like, congratulations. Like, are you going to do this again? She's like, never. I'm never doing this. So we didn't do a 5K because Kaylee loved it. We just did it because it was such an accomplishment that she did for our family. And so we did. We wanted a slogan. And so I just really thought like, I hate epilepsy, stomp out epilepsy. Epilepsy sucks. It was just like, everything was just so negative, epilepsy, yuck. And then Tyler said, he goes, Mom, I don't think that Kaylee would like that for her legacy. And then he came up with be kind, give more, stay humble. And KMH are her initials, Kaylee Marie, and her last name is Hogan. It was just so beautiful in like, this is how we're going to live our lives, of just being kind to each other and to ourselves and giving more to God and giving more to others and staying humble and knowing that we're not in control. He is. And it was such a beautiful slogan. And so that was it. So we started, designing shirts and bracelets. It was on our race shirts. We had it on our promotion and everything. And the event was on Kaylee's 1-year anniversary of passing. So it was actually June 7th of 2014. And then 3 months before the big event, Tyler and the boys died in the accident. And, we were to the point of, I remember we were sitting there and some of my friends were like, we can't do this. And I just remember going, oh, yes, we are. We are going to do this, and we're just going to blow this up. We are going to do this. And we had to cap the runners at 1,000.
Oh my goodness!
We had over 4,000 people came. Wow. It was Coach Kill. Jason Gray is a Christian singer. He sang for us. Coach Kill was there from the Minnesota Gophers. We had a big silent auction. It was so amazing. I actually spoke at it, and that's when I hardly had a voice. And it was just amazing. And there were people who said that they felt God there more than anything that they had ever been. But it was communities coming together, that people coming together. And that when their hearts are broken, they're so open to healing. And that's why, we became KT Humble Hearts, because we never thought we would ever start KT Humble Hearts, our foundation, but we had this money and we had to do something with it, and we had to make good come from it. And it was like, when people's hearts are so broken and so open, it's the perfect time to get in there and to minister to them and have them have a hunger for the Lord and provide hope and healing. And so we started our foundation. I didn't know what to do with it because, of course, at the time I'm working as an extension educator for 4-H, the 4-H program. That's what my job is. So we started giving some scholarships to the schools that the kids went to. We gave to epilepsy, tens of thousands to epilepsy. And we gave, when children die, a lot of times there's not insurance money. Mm. So we would give like money to help pay for that. And so that's kind of what it did. As the years moved on, we were living in Sleepy Eye, and we were moving to Alexandria. We had purchased a lake home in Alexandria, Minnesota, previous to the kids passing away, with a goal that we knew that we were going to move in 5 years when my husband retired from teaching. Well, and then when this happened, I'm like, I'm not moving. This is my family and my friends, my head's still like, I'm not moving. But something kept telling me that I should move up there. And shortly before I left, I had a colleague come into my office and say, you're not in the right work. And I said, I know. I'm like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. Like, none of this, I don't care about any of this. And she said, you should be a chaplain. And I go, I am Catholic. I cannot be a chaplain. And she's like, you can be a Catholic chaplain. I'm like, who knew? And I'm like, and she goes, or a pastoral minister or a spiritual director. And I was like, and do what? Like, what would they do? And so we started looking at it online, and she goes, you know what? You needed degrees though, like in theology, you needed all this. And I had none. She goes, I'm going to sign you up on an Indeed job alert. And if one comes up in Alexandria, then you'll get it. Okay. She goes, then you can apply for it. Well, I had been praying to the Lord that, Lord, I just want to drive around and pray with people, but I really need to get paid. Like, I'd like to do it for free, but I have to live. And I had been praying for that. And a position came open at a hospice service for volunteer and bereavement, 20 hours a week, maybe $15 an hour, no benefits. I applied for it. and they asked me what I needed for a salary, put in my full-time salary. I needed full-time, I needed full benefits, and I got it. Wow. When I walked into the interview, there was a Jesus Calling book sitting there.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, this is a great sign. The gal who was across the interviewing for me, her name was Kaylie. I'm like, that was a really good sign too. And so I got the position. I was doing that for a few months, very administrative heavy, working with volunteers, which was great. And then I kept praying, Lord, I just feel like I just need to be in the field praying with people. And the one and only chaplain that we had stepped down. And I asked if I could get a variance and go to school. Like I would go to school if I could get that. And they said, well, in hospice, you don't need that degree, and we've been watching you, and we were going to offer it to you. So here I was, the chaplain, and then I asked to be called spiritual care so that people knew that I'm not because chaplains work too hard to be chaplains, and I don't want to take that. But to be on a hospice journey, to pray with people. We were Christian based. I would love on people, pray them to heaven, bring them confidence. So many people, especially elderly Catholics, are afraid they weren't going to heaven because they didn't do enough, or they were sinners. And just to be able to give them that confident assurance, to be able to call in the priest, to give them the anointing, it was just amazing. I just couldn't ask for more. But then I also was in charge of the bereavement program, the follow-up. And so I went in and I said, I need some time for bereavement. So they moved me full-time bereavement. So I was out of the spiritual care program. And then my sister-in-law, Denise,
who was sitting in the studio with us behind the scenes.
Right. Who came on to hospice. She started out as a CNA and nurse's aide working, which are the most, if you're a CNA, you are the most beloved of all of the work that you do. And she was doing that work. And I saw her heart, and she'd been with me, and she'd ministered to me all along, and she's been so instrumental in my faith journey, just her belief and her relationship with the Lord. And I just said, I think that she should transition into spiritual care, which she did. Oh, wow. And then when I moved out of bereavement care or into bereavement, I needed help with all the grief groups and the one-on-ones. And because hospice, you get 13 months of grief group. So I was developing a curriculum. We were doing trainings. And so I'm like, I think Denise should do this with me too. So they moved her. So both of us were doing this. So now we're doing full-time bereavement work. And we were doing good stuff. I mean, the evaluations that were coming in, the donations that were pouring in, the healing that was happening. The thing that made us so proud is that when we would get our evaluations back, the thing that was over and over, like, you helped me find God, you helped me how to pray, you helped me to realize that I was missing something. And in all this grief work, never, like, that is what it was like, oh my gosh, like their hearts was healing. But in grief, how do you heal your heart if you're not growing in love with the Lord? How do you do it? We can't do that. And so it's just going to be a battle, and that we were able to provide that. And then the transitional grace just started to happen. And I was telling you that things were changing at work, and I just was finding myself more frustrated. And a girlfriend of mine called, who I feel is just very prophetic. She's the one that started my Morning God Boost, who told me, you need to do this and you need to video stuff, because who you are and what you are and your authenticity will bring people in to find Jesus. You'll be able to help, you'll help with them. And that's another story, isn't it? But in this, she said to me, she goes, I feel there's a transitional grace, and it's good. And don't be frustrated, and don't, there's going to be some spiritual warfare, but don't be, because you're transitioning into the grace is somewhere else. And so as I was looking, I thought, you know what, I'll go out on my own. I'm a certified grief coach. I'm certified in death and grief studies, and Denise is as well. And I thought, we'll just like the double D coaching or Deb Hadley coaching. We can do this. And I was just sitting and praying, and the Lord was just, Kaylie and Tyler and the Lord were just like, you're not supposed to do it alone. It's never been about you. It's never been about Deb Hadley. It's never been alone. It's like, it's been about the foundation. It's been about helping others who are hurting. And it was just so clear. And I put in my resignation. I have this amazing board. And then they all asked, well, what about Denise? My job. What about Denise? What is she going to do? I go, she's going to continue. This is, and 1 week later, she's just like, the Lord has placed this mission so heavy on my heart, and I love my job, but I love Deb, and I love our mission, and I'm going. And so both of us transitioned out, and so that brings us to KT Humble Hearts, and we strive to be like the greatest resource center just nationwide, because we are starting to lease a place. I never thought we'd have a place, but so many people, are already hospice services and funeral homes and hospitals and community members, they want a place to come. And so we have a space. And so we do grief support groups, we do one-on-one. So we're not even in the space yet. And so that's one thing that we started. We want to, I've done grief groups virtually, just out of the goodness of my heart for the foundation forever. And those people have come back and donated. And so we're starting our first virtual grief groups of spouses. And so we can minister anywhere. And there's people from Texas, there's people from Pennsylvania. It's like where we've been, they come on. So we can do grief support all grounded in Christian values. We're working on a curriculum we want to really make sure we get in partner with the churches. And how do we help in the church and how do we train the trainers to be able to do the good work that the Lord has asked us to do? And another thing that I just really feel that he's asking us to do is to build a mentor program, so that when someone's, little boy dies suddenly from something tragic and they're 1-year-old, that I know another 1-year-old that has a little boy that was just run over in the driveway, backed over, and I know them and they've been healing and working, so that this mom can talk to that mom. Because although I have grief and you have grief, it's not the same. I can relate really well with people who've lost children, especially adult children, but losing a child that's one in that tragic way. There's so many people who have death by suicide in so many ways. Well, you know what? We have people trained in suicide. Denise and I have been trained in suicide, but let's rid the stigma. Let's talk about it. Let's bring the darkness to the light. Let's help the healing begin. And let's bring other people who have what goes on in your life. They can relate to each other. And so there's just so many opportunities and things that we want to do. And we know that we need faith partners. We know we have a foundation and we have people who are donating to us, becoming monthly to support. We're a 501c3, and it's a ministry of that. You have to be selective where you donate, because you can only donate so much. We want people to donate to their churches, and then the Children's Hospital and St. Jude's, and then the firemen, and then the veterans service. And so people are just so strapped. So you just have to prayerfully consider where, your heart is and where healing has happened. And if we've been able to help you, and if people prayerfully consider that, we could yes, that has benefited me, then we're just asking them they can donate monthly. And so we have a base of that, so we don't have to worry. Or a one-time donation. We have to charge for our grief support, and not everyone can afford it. And so we're not turning anyone away. And I just said, not everyone can afford it. And all of a sudden donations are coming in. I want to sponsor that person. I want to sponsor. So it's such a beautiful story. It's community. Yeah. And grief is not, we're not you do an 8-10 week grief group and now we're done with you. Go on, because they grieve the grief group. Well, we need community. So how do we do that? Through the Mourning God Boost, they can stay connected with us. We do 6 month out, we want to gather again. 1 year out, we want to gather again. We are in conversation of when there's a support group, I'll send out, hey, today, Mitchell went to the kingdom 4 years ago. We want to pray for his mother, his dad, and I'll put a picture out of that group. And what was crazy is last night, I met for the first time so many people in my virtual groups that I've never met before, that they came walking up to me and I'm like, oh my gosh. And there were so many of them. They brought their families.
I was watching it take place. It was beautiful.
It was beautiful. I'd never met them. And so many people in the crowd that watched the Mourning God Boost, which is just simply the Lord had just asked me to, I read Jesus Calling and I just talk about it and bring some scripture out to them authentically. And it's at 5 a.m. and it's in my pajamas. I have no makeup on. I have an old robe. Once in a while I work out clothes because I'm trying to take care of myself. But people they didn't recognize me with makeup on or without my robe on. And everyone's like, you're so much taller. But there's so many people that came that they feel like they know me and that I know them. Yeah. And it's such a communion. It's a community of just faithful. I loved how you said you just felt the love of the Lord everywhere. And I think that my life is so beautiful and so rich, and there's so much love. And it all came through this great tragedy. And no, I don't wish that would have happened. No, I just didn't get a choice. But I do get to choose my thoughts, and my thoughts create my feelings, and my feelings create my actions. And if my thoughts are negative and against the Lord and woe is me, that is going to happen. And it happened to me too. So people who are in those situations, well, amen. If you're mad at God, good. He's got big shoulders. He expects it. He hurts with us. He knows. And he wants us to question. Go ahead and question. This isn't this is real life stuff. Question it. Surround yourself with people. And that was me. I found people who could teach me, show me, find tools. I wrote a book, The Mourning God Boost. You can find it on my website or kthumblehearts.org or debhadley.com. But I have a book and it's called The Mourning God Boost. And I heard the Lord, I was talking earlier, I have a whole memoir of everything that has happened. But the Lord was like, no, teach them. Don't tell them. Teach them what you did. And so I have a prayer journal with the PRAY to I just start praising the Lord. And then I evaluate what are if I don't give enough to the Lord, if I'm angry of someone, if I have resentment towards someone, if I have this big flopping mouth, and I told you my chicken story last night, and sometimes I do, that's where I ask the Lord, I want dark things within me. I want them to come to light. And if I can write them out and put them on paper and then ask the Lord to help bring that to light, to help me be patient and kind, to help me to be quick to listen and slow to speak, and help me to be those things, then I can bring it up and we can heal it. And then, of course, to sit in his presence and be still. And that contemplative prayer has been, so incredible for me to be able to just sit with no thoughts. And I can't even tell you, I even tried to do it for 5 to 10 minutes. I think I cry the whole time. I'm just so grateful. It's just such a joy, such a depth that I can't explain, that I'm not alone ever. And it's through the training of really finding him. And when you do, it brings so much joy with the sadness.
Yeah. The saddest, most joyful person I've ever met. Truly you are. And you said that. Yeah. It's who knew the two could exist?
Yeah. Because love and grief go hand in hand. They're the opposite side. And joy and sadness, as a railroad track, they walk alongside each other. Mm-hmm. And just because I'm not sad and broken doesn't mean that I'm okay with this or I forgot my kids. I always feel that my kids are up in heaven. Well, I know they are. Or I always feel like they're with everyone else that's in heaven, and that they're with all their heaven friends, and they're looking down like a nursery where there's new babies, and that their friends are saying, which one's yours? Which one's yours? Which one's yours? And I think there was a time my kids would say well, there's our mom in the fetal position in the corner who's so broken she can't even get out. And they'd be like, that's your mom? Yeah, that's our mom. And well, we need to help her. We do. And now I think that they're looking down there going, that's our mom right there. Mm. And look at what she's doing. God knew she could. And she is. And so we want our Lord, when we, well done, my good and faithful servant, and to see the trickle effects of our fruits up through him, but that the legacy of those who pass before us, that we keep it going through love and memories and talking in the work that we do. Because if we don't, then their memories do die. And I feel that their legacy is gone. Yeah. And my kids were too good. And I always say, I want to thank God and do good work because he gave them to me versus be broken for the rest of my life, because he chose to bring them to the kingdom, which he always said he would. Thy kingdom come. When the room is ready, I'll bring you. Your children are not mine. Everything is mine, even your life itself, he tells us. And so to be able to release that into his care and allow their legacy to live on and bring others to the Lord.
You've definitely done that. I mean, wow, you are so keeping their legacy alive. And wow, it's just incredible. And I know that people listening and watching are going to be so inspired by your story. And I know that everyone's thinking, oh my goodness, I need to figure out how to get in touch with this woman.
Do you know what I want them to do? I want them to be so inspired by my story that it inspires them to do the work, and that they know that there's nothing that I'm doing that the Lord is not asking of them. And that you don't have to run big events, and that you don't have to stand up and talk in front of hundreds or thousands of people, and you don't have to do a morning God boost in your pajamas, but that you do just to share the love of the Lord, and to people watch people who are grieving, and that they can see such grace through you that, my goodness, like, you really believe all this stuff. You really have. And he's just asking you to help those who are healing to find hope in the Lord, and help others to get to heaven and know that there is so much purpose in suffering, and that there could be some amazing things that it's going to happen. Like, they may be with me on stage. They may be doing greater things than I do through their loss, but don't waste out on the suffering, because it's in deep suffering that magic can really happen. Without it, we just get caught into the mundane part of life. So, but yeah, how do you get a hold of me?
Yeah, so we will have that linked in our show notes with your website, with how we'll have a link to the Morning God Boost.
Yeah.
And just any way that they can get in touch with you, we will have that all linked in the show notes. And you and I have talked behind the scenes about even doing more, because there's so much more to you that people just need to see and know and learn from. So I don't think God's done with us.
I don't think he's done. I think
collaborating
he's just getting started.
Together,
and
thank you.
And if they ever, like you said, if they ever feel to just prayerfully consider supporting our ministry,
absolutely.
and we will have information so that when there is a death or grief, and we are transitioning into not just death, but into grief, especially from addiction or estrangement or other hardships, divorce, things that have happened, because the training that we have had has been all of that. And sometimes that is not a greater grief, but there's not as much hope.
Right.
It's like with mine, I always tell my sister-in-law and I said, Kaylie and Tyler are not here. So I don't grieve the addictions or hardships in their life or estrangement. I don't grieve any of that. I just have to learn to grieve the finality of it, but it doesn't change. But when you're living a life where finances are always an issue, where relationships are always broken, where addictions or abuse or something is just pulling and it's always, and you don't have it, you feel like you don't control your life, and every day is a battle. That's an everyday battle. And there's such a darkness in that we want to bring that to light. And so what we want is that when people are struggling, we want them to just say, you know what, KT Humble Hearts, send them. We want them to send to us, and that's what we're busy doing in our full time. And we're in training to provide resources and online groups and materials that you need. But we also need your help in partnering with us financially, but prayerfully praying for us and giving us your ideas. If you are someone that hey, this would have been so helpful, give it to us, because we're going to learn from what I know, my grief, and what I needed, but what do you need? Give it to us, and be partners with us. Walk alongside and partner with us, whether it's financially, prayerfully, or giving us great ideas.
And that's at kthumblehearts.org.
Yeah.
Yes, which will link all that. But Deb, this has just been amazing. Thank you. Thank you for your following the invitation to what the Lord has invited you into, and following him, but then taking it a step further and sharing his love with others. Thank you for your vulnerability.
Thank you.
And opening up on your journey. And wow, just thank you.
Thank you for coming last night.
Oh,
and
my
thank you
goodness.
for getting me here. Yeah, what a gift.
All God, isn't it? We're chasing God
stuff
too.
up.
So.
Yeah, we can't make this up.
Well,
Yeah, thank you. It's
so
an honor.
Much. We will look forward to next time.
Yeah,
thank you so much. We'll be praying for you and your ministry. Until next time, friends. Thanks for joining us today. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Living Lit, and reach out with topics you'd like tackled at livinglit@sfcatholic.org. And be the light, shine the light, share the light, and live lit.